Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. As you know, I love the national parks. I love going on road trips to see them and traveling and camping and going to all the parks. And there's a lot to say about some parks, so I thought today I'd make a video all about Zion. So if you're planning a trip to Zion National Park, this video is for you. I'm going to go through all of my best tips and tricks, where to stay, when to go. I'm gonna go through the shuttle service, I'm gonna go through different hikes, and basically everything you need to know before you go. So the first section is going to be when to go to the park. I went back in September of 2022 and I think that was the perfect time of year to go. I went like the very last couple days of September. The weather was great. We were in shorts and a t-shirt. We weren't too hot. We weren't too cold. There were still some crowds at the park, but it wasn't terrible. The parking lot was pretty busy, and we'll get to that later. I have a whole section about parking and the shuttle service, but the parking lot was still very full when I went, and that's the end of September. Summer is a really hard time to go. I know some people really love to go during the summer, but for me, that would be like an absolute no-go. I don't really like to go to the busy national parks during the summer because there's just so many crowds, and Zion's one of the most popular national parks, so during the summer there is just so many crowds there. Plus it's also hot, so when you're hiking all day you just get really sweaty really easily, and it's like, why not just go in the fall when the weather's a little nicer and there's less crowds? Like, I can't even imagine how bad the parking lot is in summer when it was really bad when we went in the fall. Spring can also be really nice. I know a lot of people also really like going during the spring. There's lower temperatures, there's less crowds, but you also still run into the risk of there still being snow on the ground or the water being really high. So if you're doing a hike like Angel's Landing and there's snow, that makes it potentially a bit more dangerous. Or if you're doing the Narrows, the Virgin River might be flooded because of all the snow melt. They do occasionally close it down because of that, so it's something to keep in mind beforehand. So that's why I really believe fall is the best time to go, and when I go back again someday, I will definitely be going in the fall. Alright, next section is about parking and the shuttle service. So you can't actually drive through the park during peak season. A lot of people think you can just drive right through the park itself, go park at the trailhead, but that's just not the case at all. You can drive by on the one road, but you can't actually turn into the park itself. So when you're driving to the park, you go and park at the visitor center if there's parking. Literally, the thing that I will repeat so many times throughout this video is to get there early. The parking lot fills up by 9 a.m. basically every single day. I think we got there between 8 and 8:30 and it was completely packed already, and I'll tell you what we did in just a second because of that. So if you can find parking at the visitor center, definitely park there, check out the visitor center while you're there first, and then you will hop on the shuttle to drive through the canyon itself. And the nice thing is that the shuttle service in the park is free. There's no permit or reservation required. You can hop on and hop off whenever you want at all the different stops. And it starts right at the visitor center, right where you're gonna try and park your car, goes all the way through the park. It stops at all the popular trailheads and all the scenic views along the way, so you get just a really nice feel of the park. And if the visitor center is full, you need to park in the town of Springdale, which is right nearby. And most likely you will have to pay for parking in town, which kind of sucks, but you do what you have to do. And from there you can either walk into the park, or there's a shuttle service running through the town that you can hop on and go into the park. So there's two different shuttle service. The one is the Zion Canyon bus running through the park that you hop on at the visitor center, and the other is the shuttle service that's in town that brings you to the visitor center. So basically, if you park in town, you will have to ride one shuttle from town to the park, and then hop on another shuttle at the visitor center through the park. And like I said, the parking lot fills up really fast, so it's just that extra step you have to take if you don't get there in time before the parking lot fills up. Another way to get around is by renting bikes, and I've heard that's a lot of fun. Since there's no cars in the park, it's a pretty bike-friendly place, and the shuttle drivers are all aware of the bikes and drive very safely. So you can rent a bike, ride it around, ride it to the trailhead, and there's actually a lot of bike racks around, so you can leave your bike there, lock it up, and go on your hike. So it's just another good option to get around the park, and this one's definitely a lot more immersive than the shuttle service. But keep in mind, if you're hiking all day, you might not want to bike back, especially if it's a longer bike ride or you have a lot of gear on you or you're really tired, so it's just another thing to keep in mind. Alright, next section we're going to talk about is hiking at Zion. And there's quite a few hikes here. Obviously, I won't be able to sit here and talk to you through all of them, but I will talk about the ones that I did and some of my favorites. The first main one is Angel's Landing, and unfortunately I didn't get the chance to do this one, but that just means I'll be back to the park sometime in the future to do it. So I'm definitely not qualified to talk about this hike. I'm sure there's a million videos out there from people who have done it that can give you the best tips and advice to do it. The main thing I do know about it is that you need a permit, but I know this is such an incredible bucket list hike, and I'm super excited for the day that I can go back and do it. Zion Canyon Overlook is another great trail. It's only about a mile long and has some amazing views of the whole canyon area. One of the hikes that we did was Lower Emerald Trails, and this was like a great warm-up hike before we did the Narrows. It was only about a mile and a half long. It was fairly easy, fairly flat, not a ton of elevation, so it's definitely considered a little bit more of an easy hike. And this hike was beautiful as well. We loved doing it as a warm-up hike and I highly recommend it. And now for the narrows. This is the big hike that we did while we were there, and I could make a whole YouTube video talking about it, but I've condensed it down into all of my main points and tips and tricks for it here. So hiking poles, I would say, are a must for this trail, as well as closed-toe shoes. I highly recommend boots because this trail can be really slippery. You're wading up a river. It's really easy to slip on some rocks, sprain your ankle, all that kind of stuff. Highly recommend closed-toe shoes, as well as some ankle support I found was really helpful. It's just really easy to slip and lose your footing, so some really good grippy shoes are really handy. I heavily relied on my hiking pole as well, just to catch myself if I was slipping, to help hold myself still as I was wading through some of the deeper areas. Just really, really handy to have. And if you don't have any of this gear or you don't want to bring it with, you can actually rent gear right there at Zion Outfitters. You can get shoes, poles, everything you need for the hike. It's right near the beginning of the park and you just take it in, use it for the hike, and return it when you're done. And if you're kind of clumsy, you may want to look into getting a dry bag or having your whole backpack be a dry bag. If you're bringing stuff like a camera, you might want to protect it by getting that dry bag, or do something like bring a rugged waterproof camera like a GoPro. But yeah, it's very easy to slip and there's spots where the water can get really, really high, so I don't recommend bringing any valuables with you. I left my camera at the car for this hike, which really was unfortunate, but I'm glad that I did so I didn't have to risk breaking it or dropping it in the water. And remember, there's a mile hike to get to the beginning of the trail at the river and a mile walk back. So if you hate having wet feet, definitely bring an extra pair of shoes or socks that you can change into when you're done. Just something simple like a pair of sandals is even nice, because you do have to wade all the way back from the trailhead back to the actual shuttle and then to wherever your car is parked. So if you really hate having wet feet, bring extra shoes, bring extra socks. And again, start early if you want to avoid crowds. It's pretty inevitable that there will be crowds and there will be people on this trail because it's really popular. Especially near the beginning of the trail, there's lots of people, but the further in you go, the less people there is, obviously. And remember that there's not really an end destination. It's a pretty long hike and you can hike up for almost as long as you want. So just enjoy your time along the trail, take it all in. If you want to keep going further where there's less people, you can do that. And this is one of my all-time favorite hikes, so I highly recommend it if you're on the fence about doing it. And I do hope that these tips were helpful in planning it and getting you a better idea on what to expect. Alright, my next section is going to be about where to stay both in the park, in the town, and around the area. If you plan on camping directly in the park, there's one main campground and it's called Watchman Campground. Again, everything at Zion books up really quickly, so if you do want to stay at the campground, book it as far in advance as you can. If you don't want to camp but you still want to stay in the park, there is a lodge right in the park that you can book online. Again, book early. Or you can stay right in the town of Springdale where there's plenty of hotels, cabins, more campgrounds, and then you can take the shuttle directly from there and not have to worry about parking. And there's lots to do in the town of Springdale as well. There's lots of different shops, lots of places to eat, things to do and see. We particularly loved one of the little rock shops that were there. We also stopped at a souvenir store to get a sweatshirt and a t-shirt, but where we actually stayed was this free campsite called Twin Hollows Canyon that's just a little ways outside of the park, and I found it using my favorite way to find free campsites, which is freecampsites.net. Not sponsored, just absolutely love this site. And I have a whole video about how to do road trips on a budget and how to make them really cheap, how to find those free campgrounds, so I'll link that video below if you want to check it out. Lots of great information on there on how to travel and do a road trip for really, really cheap. But it's right near Zion and only an hour from Bryce Canyon, so it's just a really convenient location in between the two parks, because we did Bryce Canyon the day before and then we drove that hour down to the campsite, stayed there for the night, and then woke up early the next morning to go to Zion. And like most free campsites, you can't reserve a spot here. It's first come, first serve. But we did manage to find a set and we arrived right around sunset. But it was a great little spot to pop up our tent and get some sleep for the night. Alright, and my last section is going to be about my viral video that I had while going to Zion and just a couple more tips and tricks. If you don't know what video I'm talking about, it's the one where I'm driving through the tunnel and you're coming out to see the beautiful view of the canyon and the valley. And it's set to the How to Train Your Dragon and Hunchback remix song. It's got over 19 million views on TikTok. It's easily my most viewed video and I had no idea it was gonna blow up the way it did. But in that video I got a lot of questions, especially about how I got that iconic view, so I made a whole little video about how I got it, explaining it into detail. That video is a few years old, but all the information is still really relevant, so I'm just gonna play my video that I made because it's the exact same information as I'd be telling you now, but it's just in TikTok format. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to explain this the best that I can, and this is in regards to the Zion Tunnel video and which direction you should be going to get that view. So here's a map of the Zion area. You got the visitor center right down here, and obviously this is north, this is east. You hop on the shuttles right here at the visitor center to go up actually into the park. There's like a little gate region here, and that's up into the park. But over here is where we're going to be talking about. Where this red arrow is where the tunnel leads out to. So if you're coming from the east to the west, you will get that view of the mountains. And like I said before, if you're going from west to east, you'll still be able to look out into that beautiful scenery, but you don't get the grand entrance from coming out of the tunnel. So you come out of the tunnel right where that arrow is, and then you go through all of these switchbacks to go down into the valley. And that's basically how it works. I took the video while we were in the tunnel, coming through this road here, and then right coming out is where you get that grand view. I hope this helps, and make sure to follow for more national park tips. So if you're trying to get that view, hopefully the video made sense to you. And I have a ton of videos on TikTok and Instagram about Zion, my experience, talking about the hikes, just pretty little edits that I put together. So if you're looking for more videos about Zion, definitely go check those out over there. I have a Utah playlist and everything. And I think that's where I'm going to wrap up the video. If you have any more questions about Zion National Park, please make sure to ask them down in the comments, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. And like I said, go follow me on TikTok and Instagram for more videos about Zion and just the national parks in general. I also upload there every day. And if you're not already, make sure to subscribe to me here, and thank you so much for watching.